A racist director humiliates a black actor, unaware of who the black actor actually is. Darnell Hayes stood outside the grand Hollywood studio, the morning sun casting a warm glow on the polished facade. His heart raced in his chest, a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling within him. Today was the day he had long awaited, the audition for the leading role in a high-profile film directed by the notorious Victor Lawson. For Darnell, this wasn't just another audition. It was a pivotal moment in his career, a chance to prove that he was more than just a face in the crowd. As he adjusted his tie and smoothed down his jacket, Darnell took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of opportunity mixed with the faint whiff of grease from the food trucks nearby. The hustle and bustle of the studio lot surrounded him, with crew members darting around and fellow actors preparing for their own auditions. He had practiced his lines countless times, each repetition a step toward his dream, but he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he had to prove himself in a world that often saw him as less worthy. After checking in with the receptionist, Darnell was instructed to wait in a lounge adorned with photographs of past productions. The walls were lined with framed posters of films that had shaped the industry, each one a testament to the hard work and talent it took to succeed. As he sat down on a worn leather couch, he felt an unexpected wave of nostalgia wash over him. This was where he belonged, but he also knew that the path to acceptance was fraught with challenges. While flipping through a magazine, Darnell overheard a conversation just outside the audition room. The unmistakable voice of Victor Lawson carried through the air, dripping with disdain. "I don't know why these black actors think they can just waltz in here and take roles meant for real talent. They don't understand the craft. It's all about image and they just don't fit the bill," Victor sneered, his words laced with contempt. Darnell's heart sank as he listened, each word slicing through him like a knife. The casual racism was all too familiar, igniting a fire within him. He had encountered this kind of prejudice before, but hearing it from a director of Victor's caliber felt like a punch to the gut. Darnell clenched his fists, grappling with the decision that lay before him. Should he confront Victor about his derogatory comments, risking everything, or should he focus solely on impressing the man who held his future in his hands? As he weighed his options, Darnell felt the weight of expectations pressing down on him. He had fought too hard to let someone's ignorance derail his dreams. But fear of rejection loomed over him, heavy and daunting. He needed to make a choice, and time was running out. Darnell took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. He had rehearsed his lines endlessly, pouring every ounce of emotion into them. This audition was his chance to shine, to show that he was more than the stereotypes that plagued black actors in Hollywood. But could he really ignore Victor's hurtful words and still deliver a stellar performance? The waiting area buzzed with nervous energy as other actors prepared for their auditions. Darnell watched as a young white actor rehearsed his lines, oblivious to the systemic biases that favored him. Darnell's stomach twisted in knots. He had to decide. Would he confront Victor and risk his audition, or would he let his talent speak for itself? Resolute, Darnell decided to focus on the audition. He would show Victor that he was wrong, that black actors had the same talent and potential as anyone else. If he could channel his anger into his performance, perhaps he could turn this painful moment into something powerful. When it was finally his turn, Darnell stood up and straightened his jacket. He walked to the audition room with purpose, his heart pounding in his chest. As he stepped inside, he was greeted by a panel of casting directors, and of course, Victor Lawson, who sat at the center with a disinterested expression. "Welcome, Darnell," Victor said, barely looking up from his notes. "Whenever you're ready." Darnell took a moment to center himself. He could feel Victor's dismissive gaze weighing heavily on him, but he refused to let it intimidate him. He had come too far to back down now. He focused on the character he was about to portray, drawing on the emotions he had bottled up inside. "All right, I'm ready," Darnell said, his voice steady. He began his monologue, allowing the words to flow from him like a river. He infused every line with passion and conviction, pouring his heart into the performance. He envisioned the character's struggles and triumphs, channeling the hurt he felt from Victor's comments into his portrayal. As Darnell delivered his lines, he noticed a subtle shift in the room. The casting directors leaned in, their expressions changing from indifference to intrigue. Even Victor seemed to be paying more attention now, his brow furrowing as he absorbed Darnell's talent. Darnell felt the energy of the moment building. He was rising above the prejudice, proving that he belonged here. When he finished, a brief silence hung in the air before the room erupted into applause. Darnell's heart soared. He had done it. He had given a performance that he could be proud of, one that showcased his true potential. But as he caught Victor's eye, he noticed the flicker of skepticism still lingering in the director's gaze. "Interesting take," Victor said, leaning back in his chair, his tone condescending. "But I'm not sure you have what it takes to carry this film. You know how these things go. It's about more than just talent." Darnell felt his heart drop as Victor's words echoed in his mind. It was the same old story, a reminder that even a great audition wouldn't shield him from the biases that plagued the industry. Anger bubbled to the surface, and he knew he had a choice to make. "Excuse me?" Darnell said, his voice steady but filled with indignation. "What do you mean by that?" Victor shrugged, a smirk creeping onto his face. "You know how it is. This is Hollywood. The audience wants to see a certain image, and you just don't fit that mold." The comment hit Darnell like a slap in the face. The audacity of Victor to dismiss him so casually, to reduce his hard work and talent to an image, ignited a fire within him. He had to say something, to confront the prejudices that had held him back for too long. "I may not fit your narrow definition of what a leading man looks like, but I can assure you that my talent is undeniable," Darnell replied, his voice growing stronger. "I'm here to prove that black actors deserve a chance to shine, just like anyone else." Victor's expression darkened, and for a moment the room fell silent as tension crackled in the air. Darnell stood firm, feeling the weight of the moment. He had taken a stand, and there was no turning back now. "I think you should leave," Victor said coldly, his tone leaving no room for disagreement. "This audition isn't for people who can't handle reality." Darnell's heart raced, the stakes rising higher than he could have anticipated. This was it, the moment that would define not only his career, but also his pride. He could either walk away, accepting Victor's dismissal, or he could confront him head-on. With a surge of adrenaline, Darnell took a step forward. "No, Victor, I won't let you dismiss me based on your biases. I'm here to claim my place in this industry, and I won't be silenced." The room was charged with tension as the casting directors exchanged uneasy glances. Darnell felt as if he were standing on the precipice of change, ready to leap into the unknown. "Is that how you treat every actor who doesn't fit your idea of perfection?" Darnell challenged, his voice unwavering. "This isn't just about me, it's about the countless talented black actors who have been overlooked because of outdated views like yours." Victor's face turned red with anger, the mask of authority slipping. "You're out of line," he spat. "You think you can come in here and lecture me?" "I think I can stand up for myself," Darnell replied defiantly. "You may have power, but that doesn't mean you get to define my worth." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Darnell felt the weight of the moment settle over him. This was no longer just an audition. It was a battle for respect, for dignity, and for representation in an industry that had long been dominated by prejudice. Just then, the casting director interjected, sensing the escalating tension. "Gentlemen, let's take a step back. Darnell, thank you for your performance. Victor, perhaps we should reconsider our approach to casting." Darnell felt a flicker of hope as the casting director's words resonated in the room. Maybe, just maybe, this moment could spark a change. But as he looked at Victor, he could see that the battle was far from over. "I'll remember this," Victor warned, his voice low and menacing. "You're playing a dangerous game, Darnell." With those words, Darnell felt a mix of determination and fear wash over him. He had taken a stand, but the path ahead was uncertain. As he left the audition room, he knew that this confrontation would have repercussions, both for himself and for the industry as a whole. Darnell Hayes stepped out of the audition room, his heart still racing from the confrontation with Victor Lawson. The air outside felt different, almost electric, as if the world was holding its breath. He had taken a stand, but the taste of victory was bittersweet. The words exchanged in that room echoed in his mind, a relentless reminder of the prejudice that lingered in the shadows of Hollywood. As he walked down the corridor, Darnell could feel the eyes of the other actors upon him. Some looked on with admiration, while others averted their gazes, perhaps uncomfortable with the tension that had just unfolded. He could hear the murmurs, the whispers of uncertainty. Had he done the right thing? Would this outburst cost him the role he had worked so hard to attain? "Darnell!" A voice called from behind him. It was Mia, a fellow actor he had met at previous auditions. She rushed to catch up with him, her expression a mix of concern and excitement. "I saw what happened in there. That was intense. You really stood your ground." "Thanks, Mia," Darnell replied, forcing a smile. "I just couldn't let him get away with it. Not anymore." Mia's eyes sparkled with admiration. "You know, not everyone would have the courage to confront someone like that. It took guts." Darnell shrugged, trying to downplay his actions. "I just said what I felt. It's frustrating, you know? We work so hard, and yet there are still people like Victor who think they can decide our worth based on their outdated beliefs." Mia nodded, her expression turning serious. "You're right. It's not just about this audition. It's about changing the entire industry. Maybe what you did will inspire others to speak up too." Darnell felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he wasn't alone in this fight. The thought of standing together with others against the pervasive racism in Hollywood ignited a sense of purpose within him. But as he stepped into the bustling studio lot, he couldn't shake the feeling that Victor's influence loomed large over the industry. What if Victor retaliated? What if this confrontation cost him everything? With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Darnell made his way to the parking lot, where his modest car awaited him. He took a seat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel tightly as he tried to process the events of the day. This audition had been monumental for him, and now it felt tainted by the confrontation with Victor. As he drove through the busy streets of Los Angeles, Darnell replayed the audition in his mind. He could still see the expressions on the faces of the casting directors, the way their eyes widened during his performance. But Victor's dismissive comments overshadowed that moment. Darnell knew he had to focus on his craft and keep pushing forward, but he also felt the weight of the battle ahead. Pulling into his apartment complex, Darnell parked and took a moment to gather himself before heading inside. The familiar sights and sounds of his neighborhood greeted him, a stark contrast to the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. He loved this place, the vibrant community that surrounded him, but he also knew that the world beyond these walls could be unforgiving. As he stepped into his apartment, Darnell was greeted by the smell of his mother's famous gumbo wafting through the air. She was in the kitchen, her back turned to him, stirring a pot on the stove. "Darnell, you're home! How did it go?" she called out, her voice filled with warmth. "Hey, Mom," he replied, forcing a smile despite the turmoil inside. "It was interesting. I had a bit of a confrontation with Victor Lawson." His mother turned to face him, her eyes wide with concern. "What happened? Are you okay?" Darnell sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I overheard him making some pretty racist comments about black actors before my audition. I couldn't just let it slide, so I confronted him." His mother's expression shifted from concern to pride. "That took a lot of bravery, Darnell. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. You deserve to be treated with respect." "Thanks, Mom. I just hope it doesn't come back to bite me," he admitted, his voice dropping. "Hollywood can be brutal, and Victor has a lot of power." She walked over to him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You can't let fear dictate your actions. Change doesn't come easy, but it starts with people like you being brave enough to speak out." Darnell smiled at her words, feeling a spark of motivation ignite within him. He knew he was fighting a larger battle, but he couldn't shake the anxiety that lingered in the back of his mind. As they sat down to eat, he tried to push those thoughts aside, savoring the warmth of his mother's presence and the delicious meal before him. Over dinner, they shared stories about their day, a welcome distraction from the turmoil brewing within Darnell. But as he cleared the table afterward, his phone buzzed with a notification. He picked it up to see a message from Mia. "I think we should organize a gathering for actors to discuss the issues we face in the industry. Let's get everyone together." Darnell felt a rush of excitement. This was it, an opportunity to bring others together, to create a platform for change. He quickly replied, agreeing to help organize the gathering. Perhaps this could be the start of something significant, a way to amplify their voices and push back against the prejudices that had persisted for too long. Later that night, as Darnell lay in bed, the events of the day flooded his mind. He thought about his confrontation with Victor and the way he had stood up for himself. It had felt empowering, but he also wondered about the repercussions. Would Victor retaliate? Would he use his influence to sabotage Darnell's career? As sleep began to take hold, Darnell made a silent vow to himself. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he would continue to fight for respect and representation in the industry. He would not be silenced or diminished. If anything, the confrontation had strengthened his resolve. The next morning, Darnell woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. He began drafting a plan for the gathering, reaching out to fellow actors he knew who would be interested in joining the conversation. He wanted to create a safe space where they could share their experiences and strategize ways to combat the biases they faced in Hollywood. As the days passed, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Actors from all backgrounds expressed their interest in participating, eager to share their stories and discuss the challenges they faced. Darnell felt energized, fueled by the camaraderie and support of his peers. Finally, the day of the gathering arrived. They rented a small community center in his neighborhood, a place that felt familiar and welcoming. As Darnell set up chairs and arranged the space, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was more than just a meeting. It was a movement. One by one, actors began to fill the room, exchanging greetings and sharing their hopes for the gathering. Darnell looked around, feeling the energy of solidarity in the air. This was what he had envisioned, a community coming together to address the issues that had long been swept under the rug. As the meeting commenced, Darnell stood at the front, heart racing with anticipation. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "Today we're here to talk about our experiences in this industry and how we can support each other in the fight for representation and respect." The room buzzed with energy as stories were shared, laughter mingling with tears as they recounted their struggles. Darnell felt a sense of belonging wash over him. This was his community, and together they were ready to make a difference. But as the meeting progressed, Darnell's thoughts drifted back to Victor. He knew that the director wouldn't take kindly to this gathering. The industry was fraught with politics, and those who challenged the status quo often faced backlash. But Darnell had made his choice. He was ready to fight. As the meeting came to a close, Darnell felt a sense of hope and determination. They had begun to lay the groundwork for change, and he was proud to be part of it. But he couldn't shake the feeling that Victor's influence still loomed large, ready to strike at any moment. Little did Darnell know, the battle was only just beginning, and Victor Lawson was not going to let a young black actor challenge his authority without a fight. Darnell Hayes stood in front of the community center's large windows, the late afternoon sun pouring in and illuminating the faces of the diverse group gathered for their meeting. The energy in the room was palpable, charged with a shared sense of purpose. Actors from all walks of life had come together to discuss their experiences in the industry, and Darnell felt a renewed hope as he glanced around the room. "Mia, I think we should start by sharing our stories," Darnell suggested, his voice ringing clear above the murmurs. "Let's create an open space where everyone feels comfortable to speak." Mia, sitting beside him, nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. It's important for us to understand each other's experiences. That's how we can build solidarity." As Darnell looked at the group, he saw a mix of familiar faces and new ones. They represented a spectrum of talents, actors, writers, and directors, all united by a common goal: to challenge the systemic racism that pervaded Hollywood. He felt a wave of gratitude for their willingness to share their stories, knowing that vulnerability could lead to strength. The first to speak was a young actress named Layla, who had just landed her first role in a small indie film. "I've always been told that I'm too ethnic for certain roles," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "Even when I audition, I feel like I have to prove myself twice as hard as my white counterparts." Darnell listened intently as Layla recounted her struggles with typecasting and the pressure to conform to a narrow beauty standard. The room was silent, the weight of her words resonating with everyone present. "I've felt that too," said Marcus, a seasoned actor with years of experience. "I've been told to change my hair or dull my personality for roles. It's like they want us to fit into a box, and if we don't, we're written off." Darnell nodded, feeling the familiar pang of frustration in his chest. "It's exhausting," he added. "We shouldn't have to compromise our identities just to be seen as viable candidates for roles. Our diversity should be celebrated, not stifled." As the conversation flowed, stories of discrimination and resilience filled the room. Each actor's experience echoed the same themes: the constant battle against stereotypes, the struggle for representation, and the hope for change. Darnell felt a sense of camaraderie build among them, a shared understanding that their voices mattered. After an hour of sharing, Mia took the floor again. I think we should discuss concrete actions we can take to push for change, she proposed. We can't just talk about our experiences. We need to come up with a plan. Darnell felt a surge of excitement at the suggestion. What if we create a petition to present to casting directors and producers? We can outline our demands for fair representation and inclusivity in casting decisions. The room erupted with agreement, and Darnell's heart raced as they brainstormed ideas. They discussed the importance of using social media to amplify their message, reaching out to influential figures in the industry, and organizing more gatherings to keep the momentum going. As the meeting progressed, Darnell felt a growing sense of empowerment. This was more than just a gathering. It was the beginning of a movement. They were ready to challenge the status quo and demand the respect they deserved. However, in the back of his mind, Darnell couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Victor Lawson was still out there, and he had a reputation for retaliating against those who dared to challenge him. Darnell knew that their actions could provoke a response, but he couldn't let fear dictate his choices. After the meeting concluded, Darnell lingered behind, speaking with a few fellow actors about the next steps. They exchanged ideas, and he felt the camaraderie strengthen as they plotted their course of action. But as he stood there, his phone buzzed with a notification, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Mia. We need to discuss how to handle any backlash from Victor. He's not going to take this lightly. Darnell's stomach churned at the thought. He had expected retaliation, but seeing it laid bare in words made it all the more real. He quickly replied, suggesting they meet again to strategize. They needed to be prepared for whatever Victor might throw their way. Later that evening, Darnell returned home, his mind racing with thoughts of the gathering and the impending clash with Victor. His mother greeted him with her usual warmth, but he could see the concern etched on her face. "How did it go, Darnell?" she asked, setting down a pot of stew she had been preparing. "It was powerful, Mom. We're organizing a petition for better representation in Hollywood," he said, his excitement bubbling over. "But I'm worried about Victor's reaction." She paused, looking thoughtfully at him. "You know, sometimes standing up for what's right comes with a cost. But it's important to remember why you're doing this. You're fighting for yourself and for others who come after you." Darnell nodded, grateful for her unwavering support. "I just hope it doesn't put my career in jeopardy. I can't afford to lose this opportunity." His mother walked over and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've already shown so much courage, Darnell. Whatever happens, you'll figure it out. Just stay true to yourself." As he sat down to dinner, Darnell felt a sense of comfort in his mother's words. They were a reminder that he wasn't alone in this fight. He had a community behind him, and together they were ready to challenge the injustices that plagued their industry. The next few days were a whirlwind. Darnell and Mia worked tirelessly to gather signatures for the petition, reaching out to fellow actors and allies across the industry. They organized meetings, strategized their approach, and even planned a social media campaign to raise awareness about their cause. But amidst the flurry of activity, Darnell couldn't shake the feeling of impending confrontation. He expected Victor to retaliate, and he knew the director had friends in high places. It was only a matter of time before Victor tried to undermine their efforts. One afternoon, as Darnell was finishing a meeting with Mia, he received a call from an unknown number. He hesitated, but decided to answer. "Hello? Is this Darnell Hayes?" a stern voice asked on the other end. "Yes, it is. Who's this?" Darnell replied, a knot forming in his stomach. "This is Greg, Victor Lawson's assistant. We need to talk," the voice said, cold and direct. Darnell's heart raced. "About what?" "Victor wants to meet with you. He's not pleased with what's been going on, and he thinks it would be wise for you to hear him out," Greg said, his tone leaving little room for negotiation. Darnell felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. He knew that this was Victor's way of trying to intimidate him, to assert control. "I don't think I have anything to discuss with him," Darnell replied, his voice steady. "Listen, Darnell, this isn't a request. You should consider this an opportunity. You don't want to make an enemy of Victor Lawson," Greg warned, his tone threatening. Darnell took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The stakes were rising, and he could feel the pressure mounting. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to decline. I stand by what I said, and I won't be intimidated." There was a pause on the line before Greg spoke again, his voice low and menacing. "You're playing a dangerous game, Darnell. Just remember, Hollywood has a long memory. With that, the call ended, leaving Darnell staring at his phone in disbelief. The threat hung in the air, a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play. He felt a mix of determination and fear as he processed the conversation. Victor was not going to let this go easily. "Who was that?" Mia asked, walking back into the room as Darnell hung up. "It was Victor's assistant. He wants to meet," Darnell said, his voice edged with frustration. "And what did you say?" Mia pressed, concern etched on her face. "I told him I'm not interested. I won't let Victor intimidate me," Darnell replied, his resolve hardening. Mia nodded, admiration shining in her eyes. "Good, you don't owe him anything, but we need to be prepared for whatever he throws at us next." Darnell agreed, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. They were in this together, ready to face the storm that Victor was sure to unleash. As they strategized their next steps, Darnell couldn't shake the feeling that the confrontation was inevitable, and he had to be ready for it. The days that followed were filled with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Darnell Hayes and Mia continued their efforts to gather signatures for the petition, rallying support from fellow actors and crew members who were eager to join the fight for representation in Hollywood. The momentum was building, but the shadow of Victor Lawson loomed over them, a constant reminder of the potential backlash they might face. As Darnell scrolled through social media one evening, he stumbled upon a trending hashtag, #JusticeForDarnell. It was being used by supporters who were amplifying his story and the call for change in the industry. The overwhelming support brought a smile to his face, but it was also a stark reminder of the scrutiny he was under. Victor would undoubtedly see this, and Darnell braced himself for the fallout. "Did you see this?" Mia exclaimed, bursting into the coffee shop where Darnell was working on their campaign materials. She held up her phone, excitement radiating from her. Darnell looked up, his heart racing as he took in the screen. #JusticeForDarnell? This is incredible. People are really rallying behind us." Mia nodded, her eyes sparkling. "It's not just about you anymore. It's about all of us. We have to keep this momentum going. We can't let Victor silence us." Darnell felt a swell of pride at the thought. This was what they had set out to achieve, a movement that transcended his individual struggle. But just as quickly as the excitement bubbled up, it was tempered by the reality that Victor would not take this lying down. Later that week, Darnell received another call from Greg, Victor's assistant. This time, the tone was different, more urgent. "Darnell, you need to meet with Victor. He's serious about this, and you need to hear him out." "I told you before I'm not interested in playing his games," Darnell replied, firm in his resolve. He could feel his heart pound as he anticipated what Victor might have planned. "Look, I understand where you're coming from, but Victor is influential, and he's not just going to walk away from this. You need to consider the repercussions of ignoring him," Greg warned. Darnell clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I won't be intimidated. I'm not backing down." "Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you," Greg shot back before hanging up. Darnell exhaled deeply, his mind racing. He shared the conversation with Mia, who listened intently, concern etched on her face. "He's trying to intimidate you, Darnell. We can't let him win. You're doing the right thing." "I know, but what if he tries to sabotage the petition? What if he uses his connections to make it harder for me to get roles?" Darnell's voice was laced with anxiety. "Let's prepare for the worst. We'll draft a public statement about our mission and our goals. We can't be silent," Mia suggested, her determination infectious. "We'll show that we won't be bullied." They spent the next few days crafting a powerful statement outlining their demands for increased representation for Black actors in Hollywood. They highlighted the importance of diversity in storytelling and the need for casting directors to consider talent over stereotypes. When they finally released it to the public, the response was overwhelming. Media outlets picked up the story, and the hashtag #JusticeForDarnell continued to trend. But with the newfound attention came the inevitable backlash. Darnell woke up one morning to find a series of negative articles online, all written by industry insiders who sought to discredit him. Headlines like "Darnell Hayes, the actor who bit off more than he could chew," and "Hollywood's newest whiner." Darnell Hayes' petition for change filled his newsfeed. "Can you believe this?" Darnell said, slamming his laptop shut in frustration. "They're trying to paint me as some entitled actor who can't handle rejection." Mia shook her head, anger simmering beneath the surface. "It's classic. They're trying to undermine your credibility because they're scared of the change we're pushing for. Darnell felt a mix of anger and despair. It's exhausting. I'm just trying to make a difference, and it feels like the whole industry is against me. Don't let them get to you. Remember why you started this. You're fighting for more than just yourself. Mia reminded him, her voice steady. We can't let Victor or anyone else intimidate us. We need to stay focused on our goal. As the days rolled on, Darnell found himself facing increasing scrutiny. Victor's influence was palpable, and he worried that the director would do everything in his power to undermine him. The pressure mounted as casting calls came and went, with Darnell receiving rejection after rejection. Then one evening, as Darnell was leaving a local theater where he had been performing in a small play, he spotted a familiar figure across the street. Victor Lawson. Darnell's heart skipped a beat, a mix of anxiety and anger coursing through him. What was Victor doing here? Suddenly, Victor turned and walked toward him, an air of confidence surrounding him. Darnell, he called out, his voice dripping with condescension. I see you're still trying to make a name for yourself. Darnell squared his shoulders, refusing to let Victor's presence intimidate him. What do you want, Victor? I'm just curious, Victor said, his expression feigning innocence. How's that little petition of yours going? I hear it's quite the topic of conversation. Better than you might think, Darnell replied, meeting Victor's gaze with determination. People are starting to listen, and we're not backing down. Victor chuckled, a low, mocking sound. You really think you can change anything? You're just a small fish in a big pond. I have connections that can make or break you. Darnell felt a surge of defiance. Maybe so, but I refuse to let fear dictate my actions. This is bigger than you or me. It's about creating a space for all of us. Spare me the theatrics, Victor shot back, his tone turning icy. If you think you can take me on without consequences, you're sorely mistaken. Darnell's pulse quickened, the tension between them thickening the air. I'm not afraid of you or your threats, Victor. I'm here to fight for what's right, and you can't silence me. Victor stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. You're playing a dangerous game, Darnell. Watch your back. With those words, Victor turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Darnell standing there, heart racing. The confrontation had left him shaken, but it also ignited a fire within him. He wouldn't back down. He couldn't. As he made his way home, Darnell replayed the encounter in his mind. Victor's threats were real, but he was determined to stand his ground. He had the support of his peers, and together they could push for the change they so desperately wanted. The following day, Darnell and Mia gathered with other actors to discuss their next steps. They brainstormed ways to counteract the negative press and keep the momentum going. Ideas flowed freely, a testament to their collective resolve. Let's organize a rally, Mia suggested. We can invite other actors, filmmakers, and supporters to join us in solidarity. We need to show that we're not backing down. Darnell nodded, energized by the idea. Yes, we need to make this movement visible. Let's get the word out and make it a big event. As they finalized plans for the rally, Darnell felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that he wasn't alone. Together, they would fight for change in an industry that desperately needed it. But as the rally date approached, Darnell couldn't shake the feeling that Victor was plotting his next move. The battle was far from over, and he had to be prepared for whatever Victor Lawson would throw his way. The day of the rally dawned bright and clear, the sun shining down on the community center where Darnell Hayes and his fellow actors had gathered to make their voices heard. Darnell stood at the front of the crowd, heart pounding with anticipation. He looked out at the sea of faces, actors, writers, directors, and supporters, all united by a common cause, to demand better representation and respect in Hollywood. As the crowd filled the space, Darnell felt a swell of pride. This was it. This was the moment they had been working toward. He glanced at Mia, who stood beside him, her expression one of fierce determination. They had spent weeks planning this rally, and now it was finally happening. Are you ready for this? Mia asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. As ready as I'll ever be, Darnell replied, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves. We need to make an impact today. The rally kicked off with several speakers, each sharing their personal stories of struggle within the industry. Darnell listened intently as fellow actors recounted their experiences with typecasting, discrimination, and the constant pressure to conform to narrow standards of beauty and success. The stories resonated deeply with him, reinforcing the importance of their cause. Finally, it was Darnell's turn to take the stage. As he stepped up to the microphone, the crowd fell silent, all eyes on him. He could feel the weight of expectation bearing down on him, but he pushed aside his nerves. This was his moment to speak out, to share his truth. "Thank you all for being here today," Darnell began, his voice steady but passionate. "We are gathered here, not just for ourselves, but for the countless talented actors who have been overlooked and marginalized in this industry. We are here to demand respect, to demand that our voices be heard." The crowd erupted into applause, and Darnell felt a rush of adrenaline. He continued, "Hollywood has a long history of perpetuating stereotypes and limiting the roles available to actors of color. We deserve to see ourselves represented in the stories that are told. We deserve to be seen as complex, fully realized individuals, just like everyone else." More cheers erupted from the crowd, fueling Darnell's fire. He spoke about the systemic racism embedded in casting decisions and the need for change. He urged everyone to come together, to amplify their voices and fight against the outdated beliefs that had held them back for far too long. As Darnell finished his speech, he felt a sense of euphoria wash over him. The crowd was energized, chanting slogans of unity and change. But just as he began to bask in the moment, the atmosphere shifted. A car pulled up outside the community center, and Darnell's heart sank as he recognized it. A sleek black vehicle with tinted windows. Victor Lawson stepped out, flanked by two intimidating bodyguards. Darnell's stomach twisted with anxiety. He had known this confrontation was coming, but seeing Victor in person sent a chill down his spine. The crowd hushed, the energy in the air thickening as Victor approached, a predatory smile on his face. "Darnell, what a lovely gathering you have here," Victor said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I didn't realize you were all so passionate." Darnell's heart raced, but he refused to let fear take hold. "We're here to advocate for change, Victor. This is about more than just me. It's about all of us." Victor raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Oh, I know, but it's quite bold of you to think you can just waltz in here and demand respect. You really think Hollywood is going to change because you've gathered a few people?" "Change starts with us standing together and refusing to be silenced," Darnell shot back, his voice firm. "We're not backing down." Victor chuckled, a sound that sent chills down Darnell's spine. "You're naive if you think this little rally will make a difference. I have connections, Darnell. Connections that can make or break you. You might want to reconsider your approach." The tension in the air was palpable as Victor's words hung over them. Darnell could feel the crowd's unease, the uncertainty creeping in, but he knew he couldn't back down now. "You can't intimidate me, Victor. I won't be silenced. We're fighting for our right to be seen and respected in this industry." Victor's expression darkened, and for a moment Darnell thought he saw a flicker of rage beneath the director's facade. "You're playing a dangerous game, Darnell. Hollywood has a way of punishing those who step out of line." "Maybe it's time for Hollywood to be held accountable for its actions," Darnell replied, his voice unwavering. "We're not afraid of you or your threats." As Victor took a step closer, the crowd shifted, a collective breath held in anticipation. Darnell could feel the eyes of his peers on him, their support fueling his courage. "You may think you have the power, but we're not backing down. We're here to change the narrative, and we will not be intimidated." With that, the crowd erupted into cheers, their voices rising in a chorus of solidarity. Darnell felt the energy surge around him, the collective strength of everyone present pushing back against Victor's threats. But Victor wasn't finished. "You think this is a game?" he spat, his voice low and threatening. "I can ruin you, Darnell. I can ensure you'll never work in this town again." Darnell's heart raced, but he stood his ground. "You may have power, but you don't have control over my choices. I will not allow you to dictate my worth or my future." The tension reached a boiling point, and Darnell could sense the fear rippling through the crowd. But then, unexpectedly, Mia stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "We're not just here for Darnell, we're here for all of us. If you want to threaten one of us, you're threatening all of us." The crowd roared in agreement, a wave of support washing over Darnell. He felt a rush of gratitude for Mia's bravery. She was right. This wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had ever faced discrimination in the industry. Victor's expression shifted, and for a moment, Darnell saw uncertainty in the director's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by anger. "You're making a mistake," Victor warned, his tone laced with menace. "You think you can challenge the status quo without consequences? You're in over your head." "We're not afraid of consequences," Mia shot back. "You may have the power to influence casting decisions, but you can't be against us. We're done being treated like second-class citizens." Darnell felt a surge of hope as the crowd rallied behind Mia's words. They were standing together, united against the oppressive force that was Victor Lawson. As the standoff continued, Darnell's mind raced. He knew they had to turn this confrontation into an opportunity. "If you think you can intimidate us into silence, you're mistaken," he said, his voice steady. "We're here to demand change, and we're not going anywhere." Victor's face twisted in anger, but he could see that the tide was turning. The crowd's energy was palpable, and he was losing control of the narrative. "This isn't over, Darnell," he growled, his voice low and threatening. "You'll regret this." With that, Victor turned on his heel, his bodyguards following closely behind. As they retreated to their car, the crowd erupted into cheers, the tension dissipating like mist in the air. Darnell felt a wave of relief wash over him. "We did it," Mia exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. "We stood our ground." Darnell nodded, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "But this is just the beginning. We have to keep pushing forward. We can't let Victor's threats deter us." As the rally continued, Darnell felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced Victor head-on, and while the battle was far from over, they had taken a significant step toward change. The crowd was energized, united in their fight for representation and respect in Hollywood. In the days that followed, Darnell and Mia worked tirelessly to keep the momentum going. They organized additional meetings, reached out to media outlets, and continued to gather signatures for their petition. The response from the community was overwhelming, with more and more people joining their cause. But lurking in the background was Victor, his influence still a looming threat. Darnell knew that the director wouldn't give up easily. He would fight back in any way he could. And Darnell had to be prepared for whatever Victor might throw his way. One evening, as Darnell was reviewing the latest updates on their petition, he received a message from Mia. "We need to discuss a potential strategy. I have some intel on Victor's next move." Darnell's heart raced at the thought. He quickly replied, agreeing to meet. He knew that whatever Victor was planning, they had to be ready to counteract it. As he arrived at the coffee shop where they had agreed to meet, Darnell felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. He knew that the battle was far from over, but he also felt empowered by the support of his peers. Together, they would keep fighting for the change they so desperately wanted. The days following the rally were a whirlwind of activity and tension. Darnell, Hayes, and Mia worked around the clock to maintain the momentum they had built. They were committed to ensuring that their message of change resonated throughout the industry, and they knew that standing together was their greatest strength. As the petition continued to gain signatures and media attention, Darnell felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had garnered support not only from fellow actors, but also from influential figures in the industry who recognized the need for change. Each new signature felt like a victory, a testament to the power of their collective voices. But just as they began to feel the tide turning, a storm brewed on the horizon. Darnell received a call from Mia, her voice laced with urgency. "Darnell, you need to see this. Victor has been talking to the press." Darnell's heart sank. "What's he saying?" "They're running a story that paints you as a troublemaker, claiming you're trying to destroy Hollywood's legacy. He's framing this as an attack on the industry itself," Mia explained, her voice tight with frustration. "That's ridiculous," Darnell replied, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "We're not attacking the industry. We're demanding it evolve. We're asking for representation, not destruction." "I know, but the narrative he's pushing is dangerous. We need to counteract it before it gains traction," Mia urged. Darnell took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle ahead. "Let's organize a press conference. We need to set the record straight and tell our side of the story." They quickly mobilized, working late into the night to prepare for the press conference. Darnell crafted a powerful statement that highlighted the importance of inclusivity in the industry and the value of diverse stories. He wanted to ensure that their message was clear. They were not enemies of Hollywood. They were its advocates. On the day of the press conference, Darnell stood at the podium, flanked by Mia and several other supporters. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as they waited for him to speak. Darnell felt a mix of nerves and determination as he took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "Today we are here to set the record straight. We are not here to destroy the industry. We are here to demand that it respects and values the diverse voices that make it great." As he spoke, Darnell felt the weight of the moment. He shared personal anecdotes of the struggles he and others had faced in an industry that often marginalized them. He emphasized the importance of representation, citing the need for stories that reflected the rich tapestry of human experience. The reporters listened intently, and Darnell could see the shift in their expressions. They were engaged, and he was capturing their attention. He continued, "We are not asking for favors. We are demanding our rightful place in this industry. Our stories matter, and we will not be silenced." After the press conference, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Social media exploded with support for Darnell and the movement, and soon articles began to circulate that highlighted the importance of representation in Hollywood. Darnell felt a sense of relief wash over him. They were finally getting their message across, but the battle wasn't over. Darnell knew that Victor would retaliate. He had seen the lengths the director would go to protect his power, and he braced himself for the fallout. A few days later, Darnell received an unexpected call from an unknown number. He hesitated, but decided to answer. "Hello?" "Darnell, it's Greg," the voice said, sounding more serious than usual. "You need to know that Victor is not happy. He's been making calls, trying to blackball you from upcoming projects." Darnell's heart raced. "What can we do about it?" "Keep pushing forward. Don't let him intimidate you. You have the support of the community, and the industry is starting to listen," Greg advised. Darnell took a deep breath, feeling a mix of determination and fear. "We won't back down. We're in this for the long haul." As the weeks went by, Darnell and Mia continued to rally support, and their movement began to gain traction. They received endorsements from established actors and industry insiders who recognized the necessity of change. The tide was turning, and Darnell felt a sense of hope for the future. But Victor was still a looming threat. Darnell knew he had to be vigilant to remain one step ahead of any potential sabotage. He immersed himself in his work, focusing on his craft and continuing to advocate for change. Then, one day as Darnell was leaving a meeting, he received a text from Mia. "We need to meet. It's urgent." Concern washed over him as he quickly made his way to their usual coffee shop. When he arrived, Mia was already waiting, her expression serious. "Darnell, I've heard some disturbing news." "What is it?" Darnell asked, dread creeping in. "Victor's been talking to some of the producers in town. He's trying to ensure that you won't get cast in any upcoming projects, and he's spreading rumors about you being difficult to work with," Mia explained. Darnell clenched his fists, anger bubbling to the surface. "That's absurd. I'm just trying to advocate for change, and he's trying to ruin my career." "I know, but we can't let him win. We need to go public with this," Mia urged. "We can't allow him to bully us into silence." Darnell nodded, determination flooding his veins. "You're right. Let's organize another press conference and lay it all out there. We need to expose his tactics and show the industry what he's really doing." They quickly mobilized, reaching out to their supporters and preparing for another round of media coverage. Darnell felt a surge of courage as they planned their strategy. He knew that this was a pivotal moment, one that could either solidify their movement or set them back. On the day of the press conference, Darnell stood at the podium once again, flanked by Mia and other supporters. This time, the atmosphere was charged with urgency. He could see the reporters' eager faces, ready to hear what he had to say. "Thank you for being here today," Darnell began, his voice firm. "We are here to expose the tactics of Victor Lawson. He has been spreading false rumors about me in an attempt to sabotage my career because I dared to stand up for what is right." Gasps echoed through the room, and Darnell pressed on. "This is not just about me. This is about anyone who has faced discrimination in the industry. We will not be intimidated by threats or lies. We are here to demand respect and representation, and we will not back down." As he spoke, Darnell felt the energy in the room shift. The reporters were engaged, and he could see them taking notes, their pens flying across their notepads. He shared specific examples of Victor's tactics, detailing how he had tried to blacklist him and undermine their movement. When the press conference concluded, the response was immediate and overwhelming. News outlets picked up the story, and social media erupted with support for Darnell and the cause. The hashtag Justice for Darnell was trending again, this time with renewed vigor. In the days that followed, Darnell felt the tide turning in his favor. Industry insiders began to speak out against Victor's tactics, and more actors joined the movement, eager to advocate for change. Darnell's determination had sparked something powerful, a wave of solidarity that could not be ignored. As he stood in front of the mirror one morning, preparing for another meeting, Darnell caught his reflection. He looked confident, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He had fought for his right to be seen, and he was determined to keep pushing forward. Then, as if on cue, his phone buzzed with a message from Mia. "I have some great news. A major studio wants to meet with you about a new project. They're interested in a diverse cast, and they want you to be the lead." Darnell's heart raced as he read the message. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The opportunity to prove that representation mattered and that his voice could lead to real change. "Let's do this," he texted back, excitement bubbling within him. He knew that this was just the beginning, a chance to show the world what he was capable of. As he walked into the meeting later that day, Darnell felt a sense of purpose guiding him. He was ready to take on the challenges ahead, to fight for the representation that he and so many others deserved. This was more than just a career. It was a movement, and he was proud to be part of it. The journey had been difficult, but Darnell knew that every struggle was worth it. Together, they had begun to change the narrative, and there was no turning back. The fight for representation in Hollywood was far from over, but Darnell felt a renewed sense of hope. They were creating a path for future generations, and he was determined to see it through to the end. As the meeting concluded and Darnell stepped outside, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he also felt the strength of his community behind him. Together, they would continue to push for change, to demand respect, and to ensure that every voice was heard. And as he looked toward the future, Darnell knew that he was not just fighting for himself, he was fighting for a brighter, more inclusive future for all actors in Hollywood. With newfound determination and the unwavering support of his community, Darnell Hayes was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, knowing that together they could transform the industry and ensure that every story was told. You've made it to the end. If you enjoyed this story, I am confident that you'll love the next one appearing on the screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and please give this video a like. I'll see you in the next one.